that's all the questions we have for you. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Grugis. Thank you for coming in, John. Just a few questions. You know how it goes.
Of course. Anything to help bring Ned's murder to justice.
Perfect. To start, where were you the night of your nephew's disappearance?
I was at home, about to see Ned.
Why?
Can family visit each other?
Yes, John, but answer the question.
Ned and Neville were coming over to settle a disagreement they'd had. Maybe that Indian boy couldn't apologize and killed him instead.
Leave the investigating to us now. Tell us about the last time you saw Edwin.
He came over for dinner. He came with Neville. He talked to me briefly, and then he went down to the river and to look at the storm. He didn't come back after that.
What did he say exactly?
Why wouldn't you be afraid of that boy? He's a monster.
How am I supposed to remember what he said? This was over 6 months ago.
We don't need exact words, but clearly whatever he said threatened you.
Ned told me that Landless had threatened him. Landless was out of control. I could see it as soon as I saw him.
How did Mr. Landless look during this dinner?
Angry. His hands were shaking, and he wouldn't eat much.
I guess what I don't understand, Jasper, is that if Ned was so scared for his life, why would he leave with Mr. Landless alone? Why wouldn't you go with him?
Tell him you couldn't stop him. Tell him Neville said alone or not at all.
I couldn't stop Ned. Neville said he wanted to apologize alone, or he wouldn't at all.
So you didn't see Edwin at all after that?
Oh, we did. We did. We threw him in the cold river.
It's a simple question. Did you or did you not see your nephew after he left with Mr. Landless?
He's more of a friend than a nephew. We're so close in age. It's weird to think of him as my nephew.
For the record, did you or did you not see Edwin?
I don't appreciate being treated this way. I come in here to answer some questions for you, and what are you doing? You're treating me like a drasty commoner.
I didn't mean to offend you, Jasper. But before we go, when did you learn of Miss Rosebud and Edwin's broken engagement?
What does that have to do with Edwin's murder?
That's for me to find out. Now, answer the question. When did you learn of the broken engagement?
That was so long ago, I couldn't even tell you.
Was it before or after the disappearance of Edwin?
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, a source shared that you were quite taken aback by the news.
Damn, that angular man, Grugis.
If I was taken aback, it's because I cared a lot about Ned and Rose's relationship.
Very well, then. Another detective in the case has a few questions for you. He'll be in shortly.
We need to leave.
Are you okay, Mr. Jasper?
We need to leave.
We need to leave.
We?
Me. I need to leave.
It'll take just but a minute. I'll go get the other detective.
I understand you have some confusion about when you last saw Mr. Drood.
We've been through this before. Who are you, anyway?
You can call me Datchery.
Look, I think I've done just plenty. Coming in here, answering your questions. And who are you, exactly, Mr. Datchery? You don't look like a policeman I've ever seen before.
I'm a new face, yes, but my business is my own, and you might say I'm interested in this case.
Interested in a young man being cruelly murdered by Neville Landless? Have you interviewed him yet? He'd crumble like thin paper.
Now, Mr. Jasper, do calm down. You certainly don't like Mr. Landless, but let's not point fingers now.
Look, I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I want to go home. Ask your questions and let me go.
Very well then, answer me this. Out of every man in this town, you knew Edwin Drood best. How easily would it have been to murder a man with his height and weight?
It wouldn't be very difficult to push him in the water.
Alone? Mr. Landless is of slight frame himself, yes, but surely it would have been difficult for him to lift the dead weight of Mr. Drood into the water, especially if he'd been struggling.
I don't know exactly.
Come now, Mr. Jasper. Surely a man of your great intellect can riddle their way through such a scenario. Put yourself in Mr. Drood's shoes, perhaps.
Well, if he hadn't put up any struggle, it would have been easy to hit him over the head and push him in the water. Yes, especially if he'd been knocked out close to the river.
But how did you know he'd been knocked out? No one has said exactly how Mr. Drood died.
You asked me to put myself in Ned's shoes,
Who's Mr. Datchery?
and
now you guessed my response? Ned was strong and confident in himself. He would not have allowed that landless to just push him in without a fight.
Here's what I think, Mr. Jasper. I think you went down to the river that night and murdered a man who looked like Edwin Drood. Maybe you were in a fit of rage or jealousy or I don't know, something. I think you've been doing well playing the part of the caring, sympathetic uncle, mourning the loss of your favorite nephew. I don't know. Maybe you didn't know your own anger that night. But I think you went down to the river and struck a man over the head with a heavy stick who looked like me and pushed him into the river. You wanted me gone, and when you were done with your terrible deeds, you wiped your hands clean!
Edwin?